The morning sun, still low and hazy, cast long shadows over the city streets. For David, a 70-year-old bus driver with a smile as warm as his coffee, this was the best part of his day. He had been driving this same route for 40 years, and he knew it like the back of his hand. Every turn, every pothole, every face. He was more than a driver, he was the first friendly face many people saw in the morning. He would give a little wave to the kids waiting with their parents, share a joke with the old man who got on at the corner of Oak and Vine, and always had a kind word for everyone who stepped onto his bus. His bus felt less like a vehicle and more like a rolling community, a safe space with a gentle heartbeat. But in the last few weeks, the peace of his mornings had been shattered by a single passenger. Chloe. She was a young woman with a sharp, impatient face and an even sharper tongue. Every morning, she would storm onto the bus, a whirlwind of impatience and disapproval. Her eyes would dart around, filled with a sneer, as if the world and everyone in it were a massive inconvenience. She would always sit a few rows back, close enough for her comments to carry, and her voice, dripping with disdain, would be aimed directly at David. "Can you go any slower?" she'd complain, loud enough for others to hear. "I swear, I could walk faster than this old man drives." Another day, she'd whisper loudly to a fellow passenger, "He probably needs a GPS to find his way to the next stop." David would feel a familiar knot tighten in his stomach. He would grip the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white, and force himself to breathe. He had learned long ago that reacting would only give people like her what they wanted. So he just smiled, a gentle, sad little smile that never quite reached his eyes, and focused on the road ahead. Her cruelty was not just a passing irritation, it was a constant, draining battle. He felt it in the weariness that settled into his bones at the end of his shift, a feeling that had nothing to do with the miles he had driven. It was in the way a few passengers, influenced by her words, began to avoid his eyes, their once friendly smiles replaced with a nervous glance at the floor. The bus, his rolling community, began to feel less safe. One morning, the bus was particularly crowded, and Chloe was in a mood. A young black mother was trying to navigate a stroller onto the bus, struggling with the narrow aisle. David had already gotten out of his seat to help her, a gesture he had made countless times. But as he bent to assist, Chloe snorted, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Of course. What's the rush? Don't you know this is the David show? Everyone has to wait for his grand act." A hush fell over the bus. The young mother's cheeks flushed with shame, and she quickly pulled her stroller away, a look of apology in her eyes. David felt a wave of humiliation wash over him, a deep, painful feeling he hadn't known in years. His kindness, the thing he took the most pride in, had been turned into a public spectacle, a source of ridicule. As the woman and her child got off at the next stop, he saw the look on her face, the embarrassment, the hurt. It wasn't about him anymore. Chloe's cruelty was now hurting others. He drove the rest of his route in silence, his smile gone, the weight of her words a heavy stone in his chest. He felt defeated, not by the years on the road, but by a hate he couldn't fight. All his years of kindness and professionalism felt like they had been for nothing. That same afternoon, David saw Chloe on the bus, and she wasn't herself. She was on her phone, her voice a hushed, anxious whisper. He could hear her talking to someone, her breath catching as she said the words, "The test results? I don't know what to do." When she hung up, her shoulders slumped, and she just stared out the window, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. He watched her in his rearview mirror. She was so focused on her own pain she missed her stop. David saw her get up and hurry off the bus, her face a mask of confusion as she looked around at the unfamiliar streets. She was completely lost. David didn't hesitate. He pulled the bus over and opened the door. The other passengers stared at him, but he ignored them. He walked off the bus and went to her, his movements slow and deliberate. Chloe looked up, startled. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice raw. David didn't bring up her rude remarks or the humiliation she had put him through. He simply held out a bottle of water. "You look like you need this," he said, his voice soft. And you got off at the wrong stop. Chloe just stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. The man she had been so cruel to was the only person who had stopped to help her. He walked her back to the bus and drove her to the right stop, going off his route just for her. When she got off the bus, she turned to him, her eyes welling up with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "For everything I said. Thank you." Chloe wrote a letter to the local paper, telling them about David's kindness and apologizing for her own behavior. The letter went viral, and David's story was everywhere. People came from all over the city just to ride his bus and thank him. His quiet acts of kindness had become a public example of grace and human decency. He wasn't just a bus driver anymore. He was a hero, a symbol of how love and kindness can overcome even the deepest prejudice. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you.